Next up is the debate for House District 58, which has a huge district encompassing Gunnison, Montrose, San Miguel, Ouray, Dolores, and Hinsdale counties, and parts of Delta as well. Moderating the House District 58 debate is Diane Schwanke, Club 20 member and retired CEO of the Grand Junction Chamber of Commerce. Please help me in welcoming Diane.
Okay, thank you so much, Brittany. I am truly honored to be able to participate in something that Club 20 does that is such an incredible service to the Western Slope voters and citizens. So, with that being said, please join me in welcoming Democratic candidate Kathleen Curry and Republican candidate Larry Don Suckla to the stage. Thank you. Thank you both for being here and participating and being willing to serve our citizens on the Western Slope. So, it says here, before we begin, we would like to go over some ground rules. These are going to sound like deja vu, because they're the exact same thing that Brad McLeod just told you about a half an hour ago. Candidates should focus on ideas, not personalities. Candidates should be courteous and should not make inflammatory statements. Disrespectful or attacking speech or profane language will not be tolerated. Candidates may not display a prop of any kind. Candidates must strictly adhere to the time limits of each section of this debate. And I, the moderator, reserve the right to cut off a candidate who exceeds the time limit or to redirect a candidate if their remarks are not pertinent to the elected office. Do you both agree to these rules?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So additionally, audience members, limited applause is allowed, but unruly outbursts or disruptions are prohibited. The debate moderator, AKA me, may penalize a candidate's time if their supporters are unable to maintain decorum. Audience members should also be aware that these debates are being filmed and live streamed for public viewing. So with that, we're going to begin with our opening remarks. A coin toss was conducted backstage, and candidate Kathleen Curry has chosen to begin with the opening remarks. Kathleen?
Thank you, I appreciate it. And good morning, Club 20. It's great to be here today. I'm really excited to participate in this event, and I want to thank Club 20 Executive Director Brittany Dixon, President Murphy, members of the board, members of the staff, for all the hard work that went into putting this event on. It's a great opportunity for candidates to share their thoughts on the race. So I threw my hat in the ring last summer, decided to run for the House, and it was a really simple calculus, actually. I care deeply about the Western Slope, and I wanted to make certain that we had effective representation at the Colorado State House on our behalf. And I work at the Capitol. For the last 6 years, I've been representing water interests, West Slope water interests, sportsmen, sportswomen, and the Gunnison County Stock Growers Association. And working down at the State House has given me a front row seat to what we already know, which is that we're pretty outnumbered down there. If you look at a map of the House districts in Colorado, only 6 out of 65 are from the Western Slope. So whoever we send, we have to make absolutely certain that they can be effective on our behalf. I have a good resume for this job. I've served in the Colorado State House before. I served from 2005 to 2010, and I got to chair the Ag and Natural Resources Committee, which was a true honor. And I learned how to be an effective legislator there. And then my personal background is I come from a ranch family in Gunnison and have about 25 years of experience working in the water business. So those are 2 really important issues in this district. And then the work down at the Capitol now has allowed me to stay up to speed on things. So I have a passion for ag and a passion for water, but I also have a passion for public service. So it would be a huge honor if the voters in House District 58 decide to send me back to the Capitol in January. Thank you.
Thank you. So now, candidate Larry Don Suckla, you have 2 minutes for opening remarks.
Well, thank you. I'm Larry Don Suckla. I'm a longtime rancher. In fact, I grew up on a ranch. I've been on a ranch and farming for 59 years. That's how old I am. I can tell you what I did. I was a county commissioner for 8 years, and then I went back to doing the farming and ranching. And before I begin, I forgot, that is halt the Dolores Monument. I wanted to put that sign up there, but they said they couldn't. But we need to halt the Dolores Monument. Let's let the locals control their land and not somebody from 2,000 miles away. To tell you about myself, what I did when I was a county commissioner was the same time that COVID hit. And that was in 2020. And what happened with the COVID, as the chair of the Montezuma County Commissioners, is we had our health director come and tell us that we needed to hire 5 enforcers. And I said, well, what is an enforcer? And they said an enforcer is to go by the small businesses, and if you have an employee that doesn't have a mask, we want to fine those businesses $1,000. As a county commissioner, I said, well, the first thing we're going to do is we're not going to hire those 5 enforcers, but you go ahead and you fine those businesses $1,000, and Montezuma County is going to pay that fine. And then in October, if that fine's $100,000, $150,000, whatever that fine is, we are going to do your budget, and if it's $100,000, whatever it is, we're going to lower your budget by that amount. Guess how many businesses that she fined? 0. I put the pain she was going to put on the small businesses. I stood up for the people. Another example that happened was we had CDOT come. They come and they said, we got to close the road going to Hoven Week, and there's really nothing that you can do about it. I stood up in front of CDOT. I fought CDOT for the people, and that road is still open. Then they came and they said they wanted to do an NCA, and the NCA was in Montezuma, Dolores County, and what they said was that no more dams. I stood up and stopped that for a little while. Thank you.
Thank you. We are now going to move into the question and answer portion of this debate. Each candidate will be asked to respond to 4 questions that have been submitted by Club 20 members and our partners. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. The candidate who goes first on each question will also have an opportunity to offer a 30-second rebuttal to the other candidate's response. The candidate that went first in the opening remarks will offer the first response to the first question. So, candidate Curry, both Colorado and our Western Slope communities have unique and valuable resources and assets. What do you see as our primary assets, and how can we best use those assets to improve and enhance both our economy and our quality of life?
Oh, thank you for that question. What popped into mind initially as our quality of life is an asset for, I think, a huge asset, and it's attracting a lot of attention. We see a lot of growth across the Western Slope. So I would put that in addition to our quality of life and what we all value so much, I would say that our natural resources are also attracting a lot of attention and have for years. Our water supplies are what the Front Range relies on to make sure that they can meet their water needs. So we are in that position. We are also energy producers. We are miners. And I think that all of those factors are part of the answer to that question.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Suckla, do you need me to repeat the question?
No.
Okay.
In my opinion, we live in the best part of Colorado on the Western Slope. We have rural values, and what makes our community so great, you can go to Montrose, you can go to Gunnison, you can go to Montezuma County, and what you see is a municipality, and then what you see all the way around it is a farm, a bunch of farms and ranches. And that is what makes it so unique. We have bred a bunch of independent thinkers. We like to be left alone, and we just want to take our rural values, we want to teach it to our kids, and what I believe that we should do is go over to the Eastern Slope and teach them about our rural values and let them know that we don't want the wolf over here. You can keep the wolf over there. We don't want the wolf here. Thank you.
Thank you. So, okay, candidate Suckla, question number, oh, wait, I'm sorry, 30-second response. Candidate Curry.
I know we use the term rebuttal, but I don't have anything to rebut. I agree that we have an amazing story to tell in Western Colorado, and we need to make sure that the folks on the Front Range are aware of our views and that we can actually do something about that. It depends on who we send over there.
Okay, thank you. Now, Candidate Suckla, question number 2. What are your thoughts on Colorado's healthcare system? What are your plans to improve access, reduce cost, especially to rural areas of the state, and ensure that costs are truly managed, not moved around to different players in the system? What can be done to protect rural hospitals and the delivery of quality health care?
Okay, well, the first thing, I believe that the word is wrong. Healthcare, in my opinion, is a pair of running shoes, a pair of walking shoes, a mountain bike, and the way you eat. That is healthcare. Now we can talk about medical care, because that is actually what we're talking about. And medical care is where they are overcharging us on our medicines. I believe that our hospitals are not giving a big enough cut to our doctors. And I believe that if you give more money to the doctors, less to the hospital, you're going to have a better system and more doctors. As a county commissioner, what I found out on health care is you need to have some quality of lifestyle for the doctors so they'll want to come to those rural hospitals. Well, a lot of doctors ride a mountain bike. And so when I found out that they ride mountain bikes, I worked to get 20 miles of new trail put in, and all of a sudden we had more doctors come to Montezuma County.
Thank you. Candidate Curry, same question.
Thank you, appreciate it. So I'm going to defer back to what I heard Representative Taggart say earlier. I don't know if he's still here because we can't really see who's here. But Representative Taggart sits on the Joint Budget Committee, and this very question came up. And I highly respect his views, and he has direct knowledge with what the General Assembly can and can't do on this front. And Representative Taggart actually said, well, hey, we've got a problem with making sure that providers are adequately reimbursed, and because what we're seeing is consolidation. He felt there was a role for the Colorado General Assembly. I agree. But I think beyond the Colorado General Assembly, that what we see is a high cost of living throughout House District 58. That is making it very difficult to attract folks like nurses. And I think we've got to handle that at a local level and acknowledge that these critical folks are not able to live in our communities.
Okay. Thank you. So, Candidate Suckla, your 30-second rebuttal.
The rebuttal would be, Catherine, do you think that it's better to fix this problem from the top down or from the bottom up?
Okay. All right. Moving on to question number 3. This you will start, Candidate Curry. Many agriculture producers across western Colorado are seeing a reduction in the number of grazing allotments being offered on public lands. How do you define multiple uses of our public lands, and do you believe our federal land should value all uses equally?
Thank you for the question. So we run cattle in Gunnison County, and we have had changes to our allotments. So this is an issue that hits home for our family. And regrettably, the Colorado General Assembly has limited authority in this regard. We are in a position to encourage our federal partners to treat all the various uses on our forests and BLM, and we actually run on BLM. But we want to, I believe that we are not providing equal treatment if we start cutting back on the ability of our livestock producers to use their allotments. Now, that is not to say that any of us are out on a campaign to overgraze. What I think is happening is there's more pressure on our federal lands from the recreation community, and it needs to be balanced with the agricultural producers that frankly were there first.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Suckla.
Well, I was the chair of Public Lands for 2 years for the state of Colorado. I was also the vice chair of Public Lands for all of the counties in the United States for 2 years prior to that. So I have a lot of knowledge about public lands. My father, sitting right there in the audience, is 81 years old, and he's been running cattle on public lands for 81 years. We run cattle on 33,000 acres of public lands. I look at it a little bit differently. I believe that it is actually our agencies and a directive coming all the way from Washington, D.C. that is causing the conflict of which user uses what and which user doesn't use it. It is multi-use public lands, period. That is what, if you look up the BLM mission statement, it says multi-use. We need to keep it multi-use. All activities should be permitted on public lands. We'll all prosper, and you shouldn't pick one over another.
Okay, thank you. So your 30 seconds.
Oh, I'm just, thank you. I'm just going to observe that we have, like I said, regrettably, at the Colorado General Assembly, we don't have jurisdiction on some of these questions, and it's emerging with our struggle over harvesting timber. It's emerging in a lot of different areas, and I agree with Mr. Suckla that we need to balance those uses, but we have to figure out what we can do as legislators to make that happen.
Okay, thank you. Question number 4, and candidate Suckla, you will start. As a Western Slope legislator, you will be outnumbered by those from the Denver metro area and the Front Range. How will you stand up for Western Colorado to ensure that our voice does not get lost? What strategies or relationships might you implement to ensure the success of Western Slope legislative priorities?
Well, the first thing is I watched the opening session this January, and what I seen was before they rung the gavel, there was a bunch of people sitting in chairs, and they had already found their cliques, and they were sitting there. I don't want to go and sit in that chair where we go to start voting until I've went and talked to everybody in the room. As a county commissioner, this is the way it was set up at CCI. They had 30 Republicans sitting on one side, and they had 30 Democrats usually sitting on the other side. And by the time that 8 years was done, I would sit with the Democrats one day, I would sit with the Republicans the next day, and by the eighth year of that, the Democrats would tell me what their strategy was for the Republicans for the next day, and the Republicans would tell me the strategy for the Democrats the next day, and I never told either side what the strategy was. Both sides trusted me, and I kept my word, and I'll keep my word up there, but I can do it.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Curry.
Would you mind repeating it? Because I have a lot to say on this, and I want to stay on track.
As a Western Slope legislator, you will be outnumbered by those from the Denver metro area and the Front Range. How will you stand up for Western Colorado to ensure that our voice does not get lost? What strategies or relationships might you implement to ensure the success of Western Slope legislative priorities?
Thank you, appreciate that. So that is what my job is now. I mentioned earlier that I represent West Slope Water Districts largely from Mesa County, but also Delta and Montrose and Sportsman, and I take on a lot of controversial issues. And the only way to make sure that our voice is heard is to build trust and relationships with the members of the General Assembly on both sides of the aisle. I have experience with that as a former legislator, and then it was even more critical as an advocate for these entities. And in fact, it's not like a board of county commissioners. There are 65 members in the House, and we have 6 seats. So we need to build quite a few relationships and build trust to make sure that our voice is heard. With my 11 seconds, I'll say that I wish that the members of the General Assembly from the Front Range, I wish it was about a matter of just education, but sometimes there's a lack of empathy for us, so we have to contend with that.
Okay, thank you. So, candidate Suckla, you have 30 seconds to respond.
Do you think that the balance of power would be more effective up at the State House, Republican versus Democrat, instead of supermajority?
This is responding to question number 4.
Oh, responding to question number 4. I would just say that You can look at my Facebook page. It has 4,600 people on it. There's 300 or 200 to 300 that are Democrat and 500 that are Republican. And I don't think they'd follow me on Facebook if they didn't both value my the way I think.
Okay, thank you. Now we will enter the cross-examination phase, where each candidate will be given 4 minutes to ask questions of their opponent on matters pertinent to the race or the office. Please be reminded that questions should be pertinent to the office you are running for and should not include any attacking speech or profane language. I reserve the right to redirect a candidate if their remarks are not pertinent to the elected office. So candidate Suckla, you will begin the cross-examination 4 minutes.
Mrs. Curry, did you have to deal with the COVID situation in a position of authority, and if so, how did you react did you give any pushback to the government?
Thank you, Mr. Suckla. So I was not in elected office then, but I can tell you I had a small business on Main Street, and we weren't allowed to keep our doors open, and I ended up having to sublet it to somebody that wasn't in retail. So I was on that end of it.
All right.
You have 4 minutes. So.
Oh, 4 minutes. Are you for or against Proposition 131?
Is 131 the, which one is that? Tell me.
That is the changing the way that they are elected. So the choice.
So
got the RCV one or the ranked?
Candidate Suckla, I think we need these to actually be pertinent to the elected office where you actually would have a decision to make. So I would ask that maybe you look at a different question.
Okay. But can I say that as a state representative, don't you actually try to talk to your constituents on which way they should vote or not? So wouldn't this be pertinent?
Only if it's a referred measure.
Okay. All right. Where do you stand on deporting the illegals in Colorado?
Importing?
Deporting.
Or deporting, okay. Well, again, I'm not sure that's in front of the Colorado General Assembly. We, in the agricultural sector, depend heavily on them as on the H-2A, especially workers. So I don't think a broad deportation approach is practical, and I don't think it would be good for the West Slope economy. So, and it's not really an issue for the General Assembly, actually.
All right, and do you see that it's a conflict of interest if you are a paid lobbyist and then you become a legislator?
No, I don't. My contracts with my folks, my West Slope folks, all ended on June 1st because the session ended in May. And I feel like it's actually been a real benefit because it's kept me up to speed on what's going on at the Capitol and kind of who's doing what. And it offered me an alternative also to go to bat for the people here.
Can I respond to that or just?
You're cross-examining.
First time up here, we're learning real quickly. What is it that you think that you can do on the water issue we're talking about in Colorado for the Western Slope?
So that's a pretty broad question, and rein me in if I kind of go a direction that you weren't planning on. But so the water concerns on the Western Slope vary depending on who you talk to, and I think there's a couple of categories. One has to do with infrastructure and the concerns that our local communities have in terms of funding the infrastructure they need to build to come into compliance on either the water treatment or the wastewater treatment side. There are also concerns with supply, with potentially with the Colorado River compact, the operations that are being on Powell and Meade that are being renegotiated. And then we also have an infrastructure challenge with agriculture, with aging agricultural infrastructure. And I think we're going to run into some real money shortages at the State House to try to address that.
Okay. So candidate Curry, you now have 4 minutes to cross-examine candidate Suckla.
Great, thank you so much. And Mr. Suckla, I'm going to start with kind of a general question that we sort of touched on before, and then if we have time, we can get into some more specifics. But in the Colorado State House, given that there are 65 seats, it takes 33 votes to do anything on the floor, whether you want to pass a bill, amend a bill, kill a bill, withdraw legislation, like you mentioned on your Facebook page. And I just wanted to call your attention to a posting from about a year ago when you were considering running. You stated on your Facebook page that if they want me to compromise, I'm not interested. The way the legislature works is it is a give and take process, and I just would love your take on, since I'm a constituent, I'd be a constituent too, how would you, given that you have to get to 33 votes, how would you approach that on the House floor to make sure that you can do good work for your district?
Well, I believe that there is some issues that you do not compromise on. Second Amendment would be an issue you do not compromise on. There's various other issues that you do not compromise on, and you stand your ground, because anything that affects your First Amendment or your Second Amendment, in my opinion, is something that you shouldn't, according to the Bill of Rights, that you should stand your ground and fight for that, and the rights for the people that are entitled to those rights.
So what about the other issues? And those are definitely important issues that you brought up, but what about the other work that needs to be done, like the mention I just made of all the communities in House District 58 that are running into trouble with meeting water quality requirements and water treatment requirements? How do you intend to get good work done for the people here, given your views about compromise?
Well, the views about compromise, I said, are on specific issues. So an issue such as that is an issue that affects everybody in the state of Colorado. So you've got to be able to talk with your Democratic opponents, and that's where you do the compromising. You talk to them, you have the same concern, and you work at the same goal to solve the problem for both sides of the western and eastern slope.
So specifically, in House District 58, Gunnison County has a situation coming up. We are identified as a target release area for wolves, gray wolves, to be introduced, not reintroduced. It's the first round for them in Colorado. And they will be released at some point into Gunnison County. We don't think this year, but maybe in a year or two. So specifically, what would you do for the livestock producers in Gunnison County to help them contend with that situation?
Well, the first thing, and they already know this, but they should know that we've been spending millions of dollars to have the Gunnison sage grouse recover, and that wolves eat sage grouse. So the second thing is we need to delist the wolf so that you can shoot it if it is eating your cattle, and that would be the second thing. And I guess the third thing is you can talk about, and my family has dealt with this for years, but it had to do with compensation to the rancher, getting enough or not enough. We had 25,000 head of mule deer running on there, and 6,000 head of elk. And every time we went to have the Division of Wildlife pay us for predator control, it never did work out for us, and we lost faith in that.
So specifically, what would you do to try to help in the next session, the ranchers?
We're out of time.
Okay, sorry.
That's all right. Okay, so that section has closed, so we're now getting ready for closing remarks. Each candidate is going to have 2 minutes to present their closing remarks. And candidate Larry Don Suckla, you will go first.
Well, I'd like to finish answering your question first. And so as far as what I would do for the rancher, when it comes to the wolf, I believe that we need to, first of all, rescind the law, change the law, because it is not fair to have a group of people vote and affect another group of people in a different way. So I would answer that. This is the deal. I have been a logger. I have been a rancher. I have been a farmer. I've owned 2 landscape companies. I have had a truck driver. I got a CDL, And when it comes to doing what is going to be best for the people, I'm one of them. I'm going to stand with the people. I'm not going to bend the knee. The only special interest groups that I will bend the knee to is the people that elect me. They are my boss, and they are only my boss. So any other special interest group that is going to come to me and expect me to bend the knee, if it is not in the best interest of the constituents, and that means Republican, Democrat, Independent, I look at them as my family. They are my boss. They have needs and concerns, and I'm going to do everything I can to fight for them. One of my main things is, as a lawmaker, is I'm not really interested in creating a bunch of bills. To be honest with you, this is what makes more sense to me. Why do we create 500 to 600 bills every year, and then we never turn around 2 years later and find out if that bill did good or not? If that bill actually is counterproductive and the good intent of the bill didn't work, then we should start taking those laws away. And we don't do that. You don't go to the doctor and they give you medicine and then or a procedure, and they don't check on you there down the road. So we need to change the way that, let's quit creating bills and let's take some away. Thank you.
You bet. Candidate Kathleen Curry.
Thank you.
Your 2 minutes.
Thank you, appreciate that. And thank you for this good discussion. And thank you, Mr. Suckla.
Thank you.
And Club 20 for allowing us this opportunity. You can see from this dialogue that we have some really important issues facing us in House District 58. And it underscores the need to elect someone who can be effective on our behalf. I don't see the issues facing this district as being political. I don't see them as a red and blue scenario. I see these issues as being primarily regional. And the way we could possibly close some of that gap is through education that we started to talk about with our fellow Coloradans on the Front Range, but also we need to understand that sometimes it doesn't really matter to them what we think, so we have to find other paths forward. I have talked a little bit during this campaign about what I believe to be an effective legislator, and I want to share with you, having served working on the other side of the glass as an advocate for West Slope interests, and I have my own views of what I think it takes to be effective and do good work for the people at home. One of the primary aspects of that is that we need to be able to articulate our concerns, but then we got to go the next step and actually get those concerns addressed. That means working with the other people in that building. Whether you agree with them or not, you have to find a way. Otherwise, the people at home are not getting any service from their representative. I take the term representative literally. You represent everyone in the district, and it's hard to do. I've done it before. On any given day, either Mr. Suckla or myself would have to represent Telluride and Olathe, or Crested Butte and Norwood, and you can just imagine the challenge there in that scenario. I think I have the leadership skills and the experience to take that challenge on. Thank you.
And thank you. Let us thank both of our candidates. We really appreciate you being here, sharing your thoughts today, and most importantly, putting yourselves out there to run and being willing to represent the people of the Western Slope. Thank you all. And
thank you.